You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the fourth Doctor story, The Leisure Hive, or The Leisure Hive, depending on how you want to say it. I'm Tom Bettinelli, and joining me today is Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Tom.
Folks, be sure to follow The Secrets of Doctor Who in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or follow us on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you should make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications of all our new episodes. Stick around to the end of the show. We have more listener feedback for you. And in the meantime, Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in The Leisure Hive?
This week, the fourth Doctor and the second Romana go to the Leisure Hive, a resort on the planet Argolis. Argolis was almost wiped out in a nuclear war with a reptile race called the Fomassi 40 years ago. The survivors were rendered sterile, so their race is dying, but they've devoted themselves to spreading the ideals of peace through the Leisure Hive. They also have a technology that involves tachyons that lets them create temporary solid images of people and do other tricks. But there is an Earth scientist named Hardin who is trying to use the tachyon time technology to rejuvenate people. He's a well-meaning fraud, but Romana helps him get his rejuvenation procedure to actually work. The situation is complicated by two other Earthmen who are brokering an offer from a group of Fomassi called the West Lodge. Only the West Lodge is a criminal enterprise. And an ambassador for the Fomassi sneaks into the Leisure Hive and exposes the two humans as West Lodge criminals in human disguise. Also complicating the situation is a young Argolan named Pangal, who is an artificially created clone. The procedure for cloning was forbidden after he was born because it resulted in many deformed failures, but he thinks he's now got that problem solved. Worse, he's obsessed with war and revenge, betraying the ideals of his people. He seemingly shoots down the Fomassi ambassador's shuttle, and he tries to use the tachyon technology to clone a new army of himself. But the Doctor is one step ahead of him, and all the apparent clones are really tachyon time clones of the Doctor in disguise. The human scientist Hardin tries to get the dying Argolan leader Mena into the booth to rejuvenate her, and Pangal goes in to pull her out so that she'll die and he'll be the leader. But the Doctor sabotages the machine, Mena is restored to youth, and Pangal is turned back into a baby. Mena then makes peace with the Fomassi ambassador, who did not die in the shuttle explosion. The West Lodge criminals took off without him, so they were the ones who died. And the Doctor and Romana leave the planet. The end.
What'd you think of this one, Jimmy?
It's okay. I remembered when you said the Leisure Hive was coming up. It's not one I've seen a huge amount. I remembered it from when it first came on. I remembered what the Argolans looked like. I remember they've got these cones, and they're an interesting race. They dress in pastel robes, and they have an interesting set of skin colors that are all variations on green grease paint. I like the fact that they don't all have the same skin color. It's nice to see, okay, well, we've got multiple skin colors here on Earth. They can have that on alien planets too. They also have this cone on the top of their head. They've got a lot of hair, but then peeking out from the hair is a cone. And the cone is covered with what look like little berries. And as they age, especially as they get towards the end of their life, the berries start falling off. And every time a head cone berry falls off, it's like a mini health crisis for them. And so you can tell how close they are to death by how many head cone berries they have left. I remembered that. I remembered Pangal. I remembered him creating an army of himself. And that's basically all I remembered about the episodes.
Yeah, I mean, it was okay. Kind of dragged in the middle for me a little bit, as a lot of these older ones tended to do, because I feel a lot of these stories were sort of stretched to fit time. But it was okay. The Doctor, at one point gets aged, and it was interesting to see an elderly Tom Baker and compare them to the current elderly Tom Baker, which was kind of interesting.
TV Tom Baker has a better beard than real world Tom Baker.
He certainly does. It's always fun to see how the fake aging compares. This is the first story of the 18th season, the final season for Tom Baker, and it's also the first season with John Nathan Turner as the showrunner. Which he introduces some changes, like there's a new opening and the doctor's costume is different and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's all maroon now.
Yeah, and he gets what will then become the iconic question mark lapel, decorations. Apparently, there was bad blood between Tom Baker and Lalla Ward at this point because they'd been romantically involved the prior season, and then it broke off, and so that caused some conflict on set. I guess. I think it's always,
at least.
Yeah, always a bad idea for your series leads to date, I think. But what do I know? As a story, it was interesting. They had several layers to it, which was good. This idea of a kind of a little bit. Pulled from other series like Deep Space Nine, the idea of after a conflict, the losing side, how does it cope with the winners, so to speak?
Although they couldn't have pulled that from Deep Space Nine because it's timey-wimey stuff.
It's very timey-wimey, yes. So I thought that was interesting. So it opens with the Doctor and Romana at Brighton Beach, but in the wrong season.
This is horrible. So you mentioned how it
drags.
It drags in the middle. Well, it dragged at the beginning for me because we open with this panning shot of Brighton Beach, and it just pans and pans and pans, and we go back to all these bathing pavilions, and this is apparently an allusion or an homage to a movie that John Nathan Turner liked, some European movie. But I'm sorry, it goes on. It goes on for 1 minute 45 seconds.
Which is forever.
Forever. It's just pan, pan, pan. No dialogue, no recognizable characters. It's just beach and empty beach, except for all the bathing pavilions were panning past.
Right.
And it goes on for 1 minute and 45 seconds before we see the Doctor snoring in a beach chair. And it's like, this is way too slow.
Yeah. My note is we pan across every beach chair and cabana tent on Brighton Beach, which is a lot. And then we have Romana's mad at the Doctor because they were supposed to show up in the summer, or at least for what passes for summer in England at the time, and she's romping on the beach with K9, who you'd think would have been.
She's not romping; she's just walking on the beach with K9.
Yeah, she throws this thing to the ocean, and K9 chases it.
A beach ball, yeah,
and K9's not waterproof for sure.
Yeah, although apparently they kind of cover that in a line of dialogue, because when she gets K9 out of the ocean and brings him to the Doctor, and he's all shorted out, so he's not in this episode. Yeah, effectively, she tells him, the Doctor, that he's got K9's hydro defenses wrong. So apparently he was meant to be waterproof, but the Doctor botched that.
Yeah. So they just wanted to get rid of K9 for an episode for whatever reason. So she's the one who wants to go to Argolis in the Leisure Hive.
Yeah, K9 has just been reciting to her a list of all the leisure activities in this galaxy, and we hear him reciting a few of the last ones. He's at the letter Z, and then she wants to go to Argolis, which is the other end of the alphabet, after just listening to this massive list. Yeah, that's funny. Then we do this weird thing where the camera pulls back and sort of the action on Brighton Beach kind of shrinks into a oval or circle, and we have a starscape behind it. Mm-hmm. I've never seen them do that. It's the only time they've ever done that. Yeah. But basically it's a slow transition to getting us to Argolis. And then we have this sequence, you will see that kind of one scene shrinks in an oval pattern to nothing. And normally that takes you'll see that in like Star Wars and things.
Yeah.
Normally that takes half a second. Here it takes a lot longer than that. And the action continues in the oval as the conversation continues in the oval as we're doing that. It's some cutesy directing that maybe John Nathan Turner had a hand in as the new showrunner. But what it reveals is the only thing that this contributes is why we don't see K9 for the rest of the 4 stories. And they didn't even have to cover that. They could have just started the story on Argolis and had the Doctor and Romana come walking out of the TARDIS, and that's all they needed to do. So the entire opening sequence is basically superfluous.
Yeah, it is weird. Yeah, because they had to go on location and everything. Yeah, it's a bit of a waste of money and all that. All right, so let's get to the meat of the action, which is on Argolis. And so we have this Leisure Hive. It's sort of the it's a vacation planet. I got to give it to the Argolans to take what was a bad thing, a nuclear war that devastated their planet, and turn it into a positive of a hey, what can we do? We can have we can build this dome, and it's a pleasure dome, a resort community. And
they're going to spread the ideals of peace through it by having, they're like holodecks. They run by tachyons, but they're basically holodecks, so they can generate all these different environments, most of which we never see. So that people can experience what it's like to be the outsider in a culture and be coming in from elsewhere to promote interspecies understanding and so forth, which is good ideals.
Yeah. They call it the tachyon reality generator, which it seems to kind of do everything. It's a do everything machine because it's like you said, you have these inventors of a new fountain of youth who are really kind of just swindling the Argolans. But they claim that the tachyon reality generator can also reverse aging and heal, the various radiation, I guess, caused ailments.
Well, maybe. Who knows? They don't really clarify it. What they initially introduce is that the tachyon technology will allow them to do a bunch of tricks, none of which are particularly practical. One of them, though, is interesting. They have so Pangal is in. We don't yet know he's a clone, but he's an Argolan scientist and a tachyon engineer, and one of his jobs is to demonstrate the technology for the people who are attending. And so he's in front of a group of visitors to the hive, and he gets into this booth, and we see him on a screen, and he says, what you're seeing on the screen is a solid image of me. So he's like a hologram from Star Trek. He's three-dimensional and physically solid. But he then shows what they can do with the technology, and his head comes off his body, and then his arms come off his body, and he's like being disassembled on screen, and all of his body parts are moving around, and his head is still talking, and it's effective. Okay, this is an interesting trick. He then notes skepticism on part of a human visitor, who he gets the human visitor into the booth, and he tells him it's perfectly safe and he's going to demonstrate it. And then doing exactly the same stuff, the human is ripped apart and dies. And we see this, and it's not bloody. It's just his head is no longer on his body, and his arms are no longer. You got this pile of body parts, and he screamed and died. And this was not according to plan. So things go badly, and what that's doing is it's setting us up for the end of the episode, where the Doctor is going to go into the booth, right? And then at the cliffhanger, we see the Doctor ripped apart and screaming as our cliffhanger.
Right. Yeah, effectively, setting that up.
And then it turns out it's okay because it was his image, not him, was affected. By the way, there's a couple of interesting notes about real world science that they use in this. So Fomassi, the race that they had the 20-minute nuclear war with, are reptilian, and the apparently human agents who are here convey an offer from the West Lodge at the Fomassi to buy Argolis outright. And they point out that reptiles are resistant to radioactivity, so they can live in the nuclear wasteland without a problem, unlike the Argolans. And that's actually true. Many reptiles are resistant to radiation. And so that was kind of a nice, nice bit of real world science. They also say that the technology on Argolis involves radon 222. And it's a minor point. It goes by real quick, but it's like, okay, do those numbers work? Is there a 222 isotope of radon? And there is. Oh, it's not the technology, it's the atmosphere. The atmosphere is poisonous because it's got radon 222 in it. And that's radon gas. It really exists. It's really poisonous. That's why people today have radon detectors in their homes. But radon 222 is a real isotope.
Interesting. And it's funny, this plan by the West Lodge, which is an interesting name for a gang, because the Argolans are, to all appearances, dying off. They're going to, there's no cure for what's ailing them, apparently, and they're going to die off. So why not just wait around for the planet to be empty? It's kind of interesting that they maybe they don't want to wait, I guess, or what have you, or make sure that they have a good claim, because they're probably assuming that the Argolans are desperate,
or that the Argolans don't sell to someone else, so someone else will be in control of the planet, or maybe the Argolans will booby trap the planet when they all die.
Because the Argolans did have this real human investor or partner, Brock, who gets imitated, when the Fomassi show up. Yeah,
he's actually back on Earth. We see him in an early scene talking to them over a view screen, but then when he shows up on the planet, it's not. We later learn it's not really him.
Right. Well, lucky for the Fomassi that he didn't call in the interim. So one of the inventors of the Fountain of Youth device, who actually thinks he could actually accomplish it if he had some help, which he eventually gets from Romana and then the doctor. But his name's Hardin, and it turns out he's also in love with, or at least in some sort of relationship with, the leader of the Argolans.
I didn't get that he was in love with her. I just thought he was friend. So we go through a series of Argolan leaders. When we show up, the current leader is a guy named Morix, and he's in very ill health, and his last few head berries fall off quickly.
Yeah,
he's then succeeded in office by Mina, who is a new chairwoman. Although she says chairman. And just like in ancient Egypt, if you had a female leader, she was still pharaoh,
right?
She's also elderly. All of the Argolans are elderly except for Pangal, who was born since the war. Everybody else apparently was born before the war, and so they've all aged 40 years since the war. The war, by the way, occurred in like 2250, so this is about 2290 in Earth years. So you've got Mina, who is herself elderly, and she starts to die quicker than she expected. She starts losing head berries at a more rapid rate than was anticipated. But she shows up. She's been on Earth to watch Hardin's process, which he kind of faked for her. And he comes back, and I got that they were friends. He notes that now that she's chairman or chairwoman, she has new responsibilities. That's going to put more distance between them. But he's in the classic fake your data to get the funding you need to do it for real trap. And he's well-meaning. He's not just scamming her. He thinks he can make this work. He just needs more funding. And eventually Romana helps him make it work.
Right. Now, we are under the impression through most of the story that there is a Fomazi infiltrator running around sabotaging things and killing people. But we learn at the end, like you said in the recap, that the infiltrator is actually this Fomazi ambassador / investigator.
Yeah.
And that the people do it, like the Fomazi who are doing the bad stuff are these undercover
disguised
criminals,
as humans. Yeah.
Disguised as humans wearing human suits. I think it's very funny how, the Fomazi are clearly much larger in mass and shape than a human, and somehow they squeeze them into a human suit.
Yeah. They kind of addressed that in the Ninth Doctor's time with the Raxo-Cophaltopatorians, the Slitheen family.
Yeah.
And that shrink down to human size when they're in their disguises. And I just have to say that Fomazi rubber mask technology is superior to human rubber mask technology.
It certainly is. I also think it was clever the way the criminal ones, they use these voice simulators.
Synthesizers.
Yeah. And so the ambassador takes it from the criminal who was pretending to be the human Brock and swallows it so that he's now. And so they just have the same actor voicing. It's a role.
Their own language is a bunch of clicks and stuff like that. And I know this is 70s and they haven't spelled this all out about TARDIS telepathic circuits yet, but I'm going, why aren't the telepathic circuits on the TARDIS translating this click language for us?
So at one point, the Doctor is framed for the murder of one of the human swindlers
for the lamest reason, because his scarf, one end of his scarf, is tied to the guy that got killed, and the officials say, "Well, Doctor, this is your scarf," and he gets a great line. Well, then arrest the scarf.
Yes, right. And the punishment for this crime is, you have to be the test subject for the de-aging device. It's like because it's potentially fatal. Like, yeah. Okay.
Well, and it would be fatal because, the de-aging technology itself, if you think about it, it's got problems because they put you in a booth and then they run time backwards and you come out younger than you went in. But the problem is, if they're really running time backwards, wouldn't you lose all of the memories? And
right.
And furthermore, your history is bound up in all kinds of events that are not inside that booth. And how does this even work? And I don't even want to think thermodynamically about. Okay, so you sat in the booth for 500 years of anti-aging, or how the Doctor gets aged 500 years forward at one point. So that's why that number is in my head. But let's say it's just 40 years. So you go into the booth and you sit there for 40 years of subjective time, and you're not eating. And it's just a huge mess.
Yeah, well, it's the time travel problem. Yeah, and of course, like you mentioned, he ends up getting, and we said before, he ends up getting the reverse, and he gets aged 500 years instead of de-aged.
I do like in this trial sequence, at the beginning of it, the Doctor is standing there and he's rambling on about stuff, and Mina tells him, "The court is sitting, Doctor," and he looks around and sits down in a chair, and she says, "The court, Doctor." So it's like, you've got to stand up during all of this. And then before he gets sentenced, to our second cliffhanger for episode 2 is he goes into the booth and now he's super aged when he comes out. But before that, he says, "I've got an idea. There's a sort of blue box down the hall. You could imprison both of us in that." Like, that's nice.
Yes, that would be good. Very clever, Doctor. So the tachyon reality generator is also called the recreation generator because it creates recreation. But then the Doctor figures out, because villains have to have clever puns where they hide their villainous plans in plain sight. He realizes it's the recreation generator where it recreates whatever you put in it. And that's what Pangol's plan is, to create a clone army of himself. And I'm like, except that's English. Mm-hmm. It only works in English. So sorry. But yeah.
Well, close enough. I can imagine the same evolution between recreation and recreation happening in another language.
I guess so. I kept writing down, I was typing this in my spell check, kept wanting to change it from Pangol to Pangolin, which is would have been a very interesting, different character in this. But we find out, like you mentioned, that he's a clone from donated cells that were put into the tachyon reality generator to create him. He's grown from cells of multiple people, apparently. Yeah. So he's sort of a child of his race. Mm-hmm.
And he says it, and this is one of the things I like about this story, as it's creepy. Mm-hmm. You know, like when we see that human ripped apart, and when we see the doctor ripped apart and they're screaming, and then we see the doctor super aged, and then Pangol is in episode 3, he reveals what he is. And it's like, I am the child of the generator. And war in episode 4, it's like war is the destiny of the new Argolis. And it's like, this is a creepy story. This is a creepy, intense, and it's effective. And I like that aspect of it.
Yeah, I like he sees himself as the savior of his race. He's got this arrogance, and at the end, where the Mina kind of says, as she's holding the baby, like, we're going to raise him differently this time. Yeah,
I like it all happens real fast at the end once he and Mina go into the booth together, and then there are comedic aspects to this. Like I mentioned, Tom Baker's line about "we'll arrest the scarf" and say there's this blue box down the hallway, you could imprison us in that. You know, there are nice elements of humor, and the end is definitely played for humor, because Mina as she's dying is put into the rejuvenator. And Pangol rushes in after her to get her out, so that she'll die and he'll become the new warlord of his new clone race. Mm-hmm. But the doctor short circuits the device by throwing the helmet of Theron, or whatever his name was, at it, mm-hmm. and who was the previous war leader of the race that led to the war. And he's dead now, but they still got his helmet as a reminder of what not to do. And so the booth shorts out, and then outstrides Mina, much younger, carrying a baby. And she says, all she says is, "This time I must try to bring him up properly." Which is very humorous. And then she hands, in order to talk to the Fomasi ambassador, she hands the doctor the baby. And then he turns to Hardin and says, "Have a baby."
Yeah, because the baby starts crying on him.
Yeah.
One of the things that kind of prompts, the MacGuffin that kind of starts things is the randomizer in the TARDIS. They've been using this randomizer to escape from the Black Guardian, to stay off his radar. And the randomizer becomes important to the Doctor's plan to de-age and all that sort of stuff, and they're going to leave it behind here. And Romana doesn't like that.
They don't have to, but the Doctor chooses to.
Yeah,
he says you can't run forever. In essence,
right?
And it's not going to be a big deal, because the Black Guardian's not going to catch up with him again until the 5th Doctor's time, and that's going to involve Turlo and all that stuff.
Right.
But I don't think they even needed to address this. They could have just never mentioned the randomizer again, and it would have been fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He says, and then he says, "There's been enough randomizing on this job," and Romana reminds him, "Job? It was meant to be a holiday." "Well, then I'm going to be very glad to get back to work." It's just, to describe what the Doctor does as work. So, any other notes on this one?
Well, let me see. I mentioned one thing that's interesting that I liked. Okay, they one thing I like in this, I mentioned in the war games that I liked the control interface that they had for the SID rats or side rats, they say it, which involved what looked like magnetic boards that you pushed little shapes around. And that's nice and creative. I also like what they have here, which is a control interface for their time technology that involves arrays of racks that have, or little plastic, clear plastic platforms that have triangular holes in them. And into the triangular holes, you fit different colored three-sided prisms. So they're like long three-sided pyramids that are upside down with the point down, and you put those in the triangular holes. And that's their control interface. And I like that. That's nice. That's creative. It looks interesting. There's also a point where Romana has been working with Hardin to perfect the reverse aging thing, and they think they've got it, and then they leave before they turn the machine off, and it's got an hourglass in it that they've made run backwards with the technology. And then while they're out, it shatters, and the machine is still running, and it shatters, and there's this green glow around the hourglass now, and you see parts of the glass just floating around in the hourglass, and I think it looks really cool. We mentioned the Doctor getting super old, and he's basically old for most of the final two episodes of this. And they play him as somewhat forgetful, I mean, more than normal. So we're getting to see now. They later do this with Matt Smith's Doctor, not for as long, but they're giving us a glimpse, and they do it a little bit with the 10th Doctor in The End of Time, or not The End of Time, but the one with the Space Jesus ending, where we get to see a horribly aged Time Lord. Right. And that's nice. I like seeing what would happen if you had a Time Lord incarnation stretch out for, in this case, 500 years. I also find it interesting, the Fomassi have repeatedly tried to give reparations to the Argolan, and the Argolans have apparently refused the reparations repeatedly. And they initially think this offered by the planet, by the West Lodge, is another attempt to foist reparation money on them for the war. So that's setting up the Fomassi as they're good guys too. They've got a conscience. They've repented of this war they had 40 years ago.
Which, given the time frame when this was filmed, evokes the World War II. Yeah. And, Germany and Japan, and that sort of thing. Yeah. Only
more nuclear bombs.
Right.
When the Fomassi ambassador arrests the two imposters, he's got an interesting thing. They don't explain it, but he's got a device, and he throws it at them, and there's a special effect, and then they're covered in sticky web. And so he's like, it's like a full body handcuff that he's got him in, and they can't move their arms, but they can still walk. So he gets them down to his ship, which he's going to take off. Apparently they manage to get out. Apparently he leaves them for a minute, and they manage to get out of the sticky web. And then the Doctor also has a line, saying at the end, in beginning of episode 4, they think everything's been resolved when really it hadn't. Pangal hasn't yet launched his plan for reals, but things look resolved. But the Doctor says, "Don't cross your bridges before they're hatched."
Right. Yes, I made note of that one too. Okay, so that should do it for our discussion of the Leisure Hive. We're coming close to the end of the Doctor's time here on with the Fourth Doctor. We've got more of his to do than anyone else's left, but
we still have some of his early adventures, I believe.
No, we've covered all those. We've got Meglos, Full Circle, State of Decay, Warrior's Gate, and the Keeper of Traken.
Yeah, so lots of interesting comings and goings coming up.
Yep. And we only have our next episode we'll be doing is going to be the Fifth Doctor's, the last televised Fifth Doctor for us, and then we have a few First Doctor ones we still got to do too.
What's the title?
Oh, the Fifth Doctor one is one right before Caves of Androzani, and let me see if I can
Planet of Fire.
Planet of Fire. Right. Yes. So that's the last of his. The Seventh Doctor had more stories than anyone else than any of the other doctors.
Fourth Doctor.
Sorry, what did I say? The
seventh.
No. Sorry, the fourth. The First Doctor. We have a few of his as well to go, so catch up on that. Yeah.
So for the next one with the Fifth Doctor, Turlough leaves, Perry arrives.
That'll be Perry's first one. That should be interesting. See how she arrived. I'm curious because we saw her in the Caves of Androzani already, but but it is curious to see her before the Sixth Doctor, like what that character was like. So that'll be interesting. All right. Well, in the meantime, we're going to get some feedback right now on our recent discussion of the Second Doctor's final stories, the War Games, this covering the last part, episode 7 to 10. Steve Stotts writes in via Facebook. I'm interested in watching the colorized version of this, but like you both said, there was far too much cut out. Pretty much like I thought it would be. Not sure who did the judgment call on a condensing of that magnitude. It could be considered insulting to the original. Your description of the new score reminds me of the Five Doctors special edition with the out-of-place and over-the-top music. I'm hesitant to watch it with the addition of new Who material. I'll give it a go, but I'm still apprehensive.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm glad they did it. And I think it's a net plus, but I think it is way too truncated.
I wonder why they didn't just. I mean, I could guess it's expense and time, but colorize the whole thing, like just as you've done with other things.
Yeah, that would be even better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because they're animating stuff. In fact, you were telling me that we're going to get an animation of a First Doctor story that we
in May. The animation, it's apparently already out in Britain, but here in America in May, the animated reconstruction of The Savages, which is Peter Purves' final story as Stephen, is going to come out.
Okay. You know, an early one that I think we missed is the Mongolians one. So is it Mongolian?
Marco Polo.
Marco Polo, right. It's Mongolian. I think that was before we were doing the ones that were only available in audio, or is that even available in audio? I think that might be missing altogether.
No. None of them are missing.
Okay, good.
And there are fan reconstructions of Marco Polo, and the sets, the set photos are really impressive, and it's a good story. So we should look back and see if there are any we haven't done and do them, as part of this process.
I think it's the only one we skipped just because. It was early on.
Just because I couldn't convince you and Father Corey to do one that early on that was
it was audio like only. Yeah. But later on, we started doing those, so we need to go back and do that one.
It's got a really nice story, and when the Doctor finally meets Marco Polo, his relationship with Marco Polo is fun.
And it's a pure historical.
I'm sorry, meets Genghis Khan.
Oh,
yes, it's a pure historical.
All right. Yes, they were still doing those. Good. Awesome. Well, that'll bring us to the end of the show. Before we do depart, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including Roxanne F., Lee and Julia, Brenda H., Jerry Ann H., and Joseph K. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of the Leisure Hive? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page. Send an email to doctorwho@sqpn.com or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. Or you can watch the Secrets of Doctor Who on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time when we will be discussing that Fifth Doctor story, Planet of Fire. And so until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Don Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, don't cross your bridges,